when you put any kind of chemical, outside chemical, man-made chemical, pills of any sort, inside your body, that changes the chemistry of your body. So the brain hormones that's supposed to enhance neuroplasticity to heal you lose capacity to do that.
The following is a conversation with Gemi Bertran, PhD, the founder of Nourish the Brain Institute and the author of The Fabulous Brain. She's a federal contractor with the DoD and helped many trauma survivors. Most of all, she's an amazing person, full of love, and wants to make the world a better place. This is the Healing Trauma Podcast. I'm Jan Becker, and this is the companion to the movie Healing Trauma, The Resilient Soul. Gemi, you are a researcher, a brain researcher, and my first question is, how did you get where you are right now?
In 2006, I was a single mother of two working full-time. I was finishing my PhD in international conflict management, and I was working overseas. I was deployed 3 months at the time, and my brain broke due to stress.
Your brain broke. Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting way of putting this. Okay.
Well, there is, for a split second, the brain and the central nervous system don't connect. So it's like they turn off the switch for a second. And my body forgot how to function. So one morning, I woke up in the morning, and I knew I wasn't dead because I had thoughts, but my body wasn't moving. So through my thinking, I had to tell my feet to get to the ground.
So you had to remote control your body with your mind? Exactly. So there was no automation no. Gone.
So that was really interesting to me, because I thought, how can I mentally give orders to my body to move, right? So I can call for emergency, right? Like, I need help, something is really wrong, right? And that's how all started. I was rushed to the ER, and doctors did all kinds of testing, including 3 spinal taps, which is the most horrible thing.
Spinal tap, what is that exactly?
They puncture in between your 2 vertebrae, and they suck your spinal fluid.
Okay.
With a very thick needle.
Why are they doing that?
Well, because they were very concerned that I had some kind of leukemia or cancer.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you didn't.
I didn't. So they couldn't find any diagnosis. So they did all kinds of testing, and they couldn't come up with anything. Until later on, which I went to a functional doctor that he's an oncologist, and he said, you know what? You had what's called like a brain spasm. For a second, your brain did something that kind of reboot the whole system, right? And then I had, I had to take care of myself because there was no diagnosis, there was no problem.
Okay, and now of course the question is, what's the cause of this? Why did this happen?
Well, that happens to put it in a way, is hard work for many years, mistreating myself. Right?
So, and I think this is then aligned also with the topic of this podcast, trauma.
Trauma,
right?
Completely.
So you self-traumatized yourself.
Well, like I was married to a very abusive man for almost 10 years, right, before I divorced him. It was extremely emotionally abusive, and that kind of dimmed myself. And then part of me had this self-destructive kind of behavior without, being aware to do it, right? Like I never drink or smoke or do drugs or any of that. But emotionally, you can really, really deplete yourself, right? So in a way, I stopped eating appropriately, right? So my brain wasn't getting any nutrients or not enough. That caused that I lost my period for 1.5 years. I lost a lot of weight, right? I was having side effects, but I didn't realize that that was a problem related to mistreating myself emotionally. Right?
Would you say that mistreating yourself is like the continuation of the that you were mistreated before? It's like basically a habit that you just took over from the environment?
Well, this is how the brain works. I mean, like the thing is, I'm very lucky. I am one of the lucky ones, because what happens usually is we perpetuate behaviors that we see at home. Mm-hmm. That wasn't my case. I had a very, very healthy childhood with very loving and caring parents. But then I grew up and I got married, and I married a man that wasn't good to me. And I thought, I can handle this. And I kept putting up with it, right? Without even communicating to anybody. Nobody knew anything. So and then moving forward, like more responsibilities. I had a child, and then my PhD, which was taking me all over the place, and then people in those places that were not eating. So I thought, if they don't eat appropriately, I have no right to eat.
Well, there's one question I wanted to ask you. You said that's what the brain does. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So that's a really interesting point. So what does the brain do to keep you perpetually in this situation?
Well, the brain does two things. One is recognizes the pattern. So if somebody does that to you, for you it's easy to perpetuate, right? The reason is because every thought and every action that we creates a neuropathway in the brain. Mm. When you already walked that neuropathway, it's much easier to repeat it. And the more you repeat, the stronger it becomes. So you go there, which much more is, for good and for bad.
Okay, basically, when you divorce your husband, but then you still wanted to walk this neural pathway because that's the trodden way, the way you used to. So you created a situation. Is that true? You created a situation that you know.
Yes, I mean, like there is many reasons why we do things like this, right? Another one is like you wanna look in a specific way, right? Like I work in a world that was men managed, like there was no women. So that means that you have to be super strong, like for us, for women, right? Like in my schooling, career, everything it was basically men around. So I had to prove myself twice as much. Mm-hmm. So you cannot show weakness, ever. So vulnerability was not a thing, not even a word in my vocabulary. So you are always putting yourself out there with all the emotional damage that I was carrying, and also, like perpetuating that, right? Like I don't need to eat, I don't need, like I was made out of some kind of superhuman crap that doesn't exist.
So basically, I saw you. So you had a very demanding career in a men's world where you had to double prove yourself. At the same time, you had a husband that was very abusive, and then you got so used to this state of stress. Is that maybe the right way to put it?
Well, it's sustained stress. Like I lived for 10 years with an overload of cortisol inside my body, and when that happens, your body develops something called cortisol resistance. It means that your body cannot tell anymore if you are stressed or that's your life. And when that happens, something breaks.
Okay, just before we continue with your story, would you say that a lot of people especially in the Western world, are in this state?
Yes, we are so used to stress. I mean, like, there is such a wide range of what stress means, right? If you drive in LA traffic, you are stressed, right? And if you have something that happens to you, if you have a car accident, if your children die, if you are being raped, there's all levels of different types of stress. But usually those type of stress are punctual. It happens once, right? And then you carry on with the stress. It's different when you live with a high level of stress for many, many years.
So I think in trauma there's some terms for that. Like there's this, I don't know what the professional terms are right now, but there's this trauma that happens once, but then there's perpetual trauma. Are there any specific, like commonly used words for that?
Well, PTSD is the one, basically, because it's even when happens like a specific trauma situation, the afterwards PTSD is gonna be there, like the fear, the stress, the cortisol. When you have developed slowly but surely PTSD over time, your brain and your central nervous system think that you are always in fight or flight. So your brain actually is the hypothalamus that sends the message to your adrenal glands to release the stress hormones.
Where is the hypothalamus in the brain? Is it
The
somewhere in
hypothalamus,
the back here, or where is it?
The hypothalamus is a cluster of brain cells that create that specific area that manages two types of hormones, sexual hormones and stress hormones. Okay. It does other things like measure body temperature and other things, right? But those two hormones are hosted in the same place, which is your adrenal glands. So when we are super stressed, people tend to lose libido because the hormones are in the same place. So cortisol and stress hormones deplete your adrenal. Right? So the body starts having a lot of issues. So going back to your question, PTSD, it will be the effect that the stress, sustained stress over time causes PTSD.
Okay, and it's back to you. So how did you come back to your normal or better self, however you want to call it?
Normal. I would not call it normal.
Yeah, but how would you, I mean, now, how did you come back from all this?
Well, because I didn't have anything to do for a year and a half, I had to be at home, basically. I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go outside during daylight because my eyes had such a high photosensitivity that the sunlight was completely detrimental for my well-functioning. So I stayed inside the house for the most part, and I started doing research because that's what I do. I do research about anything and everything that I am interested in. So my brain was very interesting to me, right? And then I learned that 10% of the diagnosis with the brain are accurate. Then 90% are wrong.
Oh, what do you mean? Oh, when a brain gets a diagnosis, 90% are wrong.
They are always wrong.
Like always wrong.
To put it in a way, 90% of the time of something happens in somebody's brain is a wrong diagnosis.
Okay.
And the reason is because you cannot dig in the brain. Because when something happens like what happened to me, it doesn't leave a scar. It's not like a stroke that you can see the bleeding. It's not like a damage like a TBI, like a traumatic brain injury. There is no recollection of the damage. So what happened is in the air. They don't know, right? So, and then you carry with a set of side effects from the original problem, which is that spasm. So what the doctor said is, well, you are a 35-year-old woman and you won't be complaining if something didn't happen, right? Like those set of symptoms are very specific. We don't know what happened.
That's a very satisfying answer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? Like we don't know what happened. And because of that, we cannot give you any medication. Right? So I said, okay. And then they said, well, just go on. And then if you have side effects, come back and tell us. Because that will be interesting. Right? Of course, I didn't go back. But I did have lots of side effects: depression, anxiety, insomnia. In a specific times.
This
right?
is classic PTSD, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Like that's what happens. And then you have the fear. I had 2 children then.
Right.
You have the fear that, like if something happens to me, what's going to happen to these kids? Right? Like it's you are scared. I mean, and then, like I thought, the only thing that I can do is what I know how to do, is do research and study the brain and neuroscience and what's going on here, right? And over that, I studied also many cultures, like Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, functional medicine, all kinds of different alternative medicine at the same time that, like a spirituality, because I spent hours and hours and hours in meditation, right? I was in nature every single day. So I tested everything that I was learning and I applied to me.
How did you come up with the idea to meditate?
I don't really remember the day that I thought, I'm just going to meditate. But the one thing that I started doing while I was with the problem, right, it was yoga. So I thought I cannot do any kind of exercise that is going to be depleting physically because I didn't have the strength. I could barely walk. But I thought small, mild exercises, yoga exercises is going to be, it has to feel good, because one of the things that you learn when you start, doing research about the brain is your brain is filled up with chemicals. And endorphins are very necessary chemicals to bring up your energy and your state of mind, more positivity, more happiness, more joy, right? So I thought, I have to exercise. So I went for walks in the afternoon and super, super early in the morning. And then, I tried all kinds of things. And meditation was part of it, right? Like as it today, if you ask my children where I spend the most of the time when I had this problem, they would say in her bedroom meditating. Where is mom? Up there meditating. Like I could meditate for hours.
Oh, wow. Did you have a special technique?
I made it up myself. Like later on, as you well know, I learned TM, but that was many years later. I made up meditation.
So yeah, that's, I think, a very interesting thing, because I believe that everybody knows what to do to heal. It's like built in your system. And if you just listen carefully enough, you do the right thing. So it seems to me in that situation, so your doctors didn't give you any satisfying answer, which was maybe a good thing, right?
It was completely a good thing.
And then you just basically were just with yourself. You had all the time in the world. Yes, you did research, but you also listened to yourself. And you probably did what felt right, or maybe you heard that little voice already that told you, like, hey, maybe don't you meditate? And that's incredible for someone who you probably didn't have much exposure to meditation, right, before? Did you have much?
Well, I did, because I traveled a lot to India.
Oh, okay.
So I was very, not so much about meditation, but yes, the praying and the chanting and, like mantras and all those things. It was kind of natural within me due to the traveling. But meditating hours was something that I never done before. And you build up towards that, But I did get very, very much in toned with my inner self, my intuition, like, I learned how to, use the things that were good and serving me and get rid of everything else that it didn't serve me.
Is that what you're also teaching now to people?
Yes, within other things, but yes, that's always a part of it, of course. Okay. Yeah.
So you're at home, healing slowly, meditating, researching. So what were the next steps?
Well, then I learned that there is a specific foods that work really well for the brain.
Okay.
To restore the brain. What you just said is very significant. You said we already know what to do, right? Maybe we don't know that well what to do because we are very detached from our inner self, but your brain knows what to do. Your brain has a gift which is called neuroplasticity, and one of the gifts is this one, is your brain knows how to restore your body and your brain to normal, to what the brain understands as a normal.
I'm assuming that you were already guided by that inner knowledge when you were looking into food, right?
Absolutely.
So, now I want to know, what's the food?
There is many things. You know, like anything that you can put in your body that is good and healthy, and everybody knows what healthy is. And everybody knows that it's not McDonald's, right? Or any kind of junk food.
Of McDonald's is good.
Right?
Yeah.
So
right.
it's one of the most important things for the brain is good fats, because the brain is made out of fat. When you restrict food, you restrict fats. And then people start getting sick. Because the brain only has one way to let you know that you are screwing up your health and is making you sick in one way or another.
So not only brain sick, but body sick.
Yeah.
Okay. So your brain doesn't talk to you directly. I mean, sometimes it does, I guess. But this being sick is a signal from the brain. Hey, wake up! There's something wrong.
Something is wrong.
You need to change. Don't continue. And I think in our culture, it's more like this. Oh, something is wrong. We need to just take something and then do exactly as we did before. So we change nothing. We just throw in some pills to, kind of balance the body like halfway so we can continue as usual. But that's the wrong path, right?
So I always say, like everybody has to do what they believe is good for themselves, right? But if you listen to yourself, and I will give you a very simple explanation, it makes complete sense. When you put any kind of chemical, outside chemical, man-made chemical, pills of any sort, inside your body, that changes the chemistry of your body. So the brain hormones that's supposed to enhance neuroplasticity to heal you lose capacity to do that. Because they have to deal with a chemical that enables or disables specific chemicals.
I actually have a story, and a very, very recent story. So my cholesterol is too high. And I did some research, but I don't want to get into the cholesterol thing. But my doctor finally convinced me to take statins, right? And he was because we talked about it for a year. So I said, okay, I'll try it, fine, and then I'll just improve my nutrition over time. My nutrition is, I would say, it's not ideal, but it has gotten better. But so I agreed to take the statins. In my mind, I was saying, okay, I'll just take it for a while and improve my nutrition. What happened was my body was revolting. I mean, I've never felt as bad. I mean, I had diarrhea. I felt this overall sickness that I can't even describe. Everything seemed off. My whole body seemed off. I mean, I couldn't sleep. I mean, and my mood was influenced by it. And I took it for like 2 weeks because somebody else told me, your body gets used to it, right? So fine. I mean, but I was already very critical of it. And then I stopped taking it, especially because there was a study that actually proved that statins reduce the risk of heart attack by 1.8%. And I immediately said, okay, that's it. It was from a legit university, and maybe I put the link in the description. And so I stopped taking it, and immediately everything went away. I felt so much better. And now I really don't trust a lot of things I hear, and I really try to listen to my body even more now. So, I mean, that's my story. With
no, that's exactly it, right? Like it's like I treated people that had seizures, and neurologists, instead of saying let's strengthen the brain with foods and superfoods and things, the culture, what they are educated for is let's stop the seizures. But guess what? The side effects of anti-seizure medication, the first side effect of anti-seizure medication is seizures.
That's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so, and then suicidal thoughts. And
that's
then,
fantastic.
And then depression, right? And anxiety and insomnia and overweight and dizziness. And then, of course, as soon as they give you that medication, they will get rid of your driver's license because you have two problems. You are taking a medication that is going to give you seizures, most likely. Medication that we will have to keep increasing because your body builds up resistance to the medication. And eventually, will induce seizures.
So your life is ruined because of medication. Instead of listening to the signals of your brain that is saying you're having seizures because there's something missing in your diet, you're too stressed, you have a trauma to deal with, and
usually stress is the magic word, right? Like when I said my brain broke, this is a broken brain too. When happens this, right? Like there is things that are happening because your body is fighting itself due to cortisol resistance. When there is so much cortisol in the body fights itself.
So yeah, let's maybe jump to autoimmune disease.
That's autoimmune disease. That's how autoimmune disease are created.
Okay, so let's talk about this. When you look at the root cause of autoimmune disease, what is it? I mean,
it's cortisol overload.
It's stress.
It's a stress, even though if they don't realize, and sometimes don't comes from them. Sometimes it comes from the mom when the baby is in the womb, and then there is so much cortisol that the mom has, the baby develops cortisol resistance.
Okay, because I know two women that developed autoimmune disease in their 20s or even before. And wow, that's when something's wrong.
So when it happens when you are a baby or a kid with children, right, is because it comes from the womb many, many times. And when it happens when you are older, is you're making,
Oh, very interesting.
And it all depends on the personality. Yeah, like some people has a high tolerance for stress and some people has a much lower tolerance for stress. Right? You have to build up tolerance. It's like a muscle.
Oh, so there's a way
you can train yourself.
So you have to train yourself to deal, basically, then stress just becomes, I don't know, maybe exciting life or something.
No. Well, it's a mindset, right?
Mindset, right?
What we do is you learn that nothing matters.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is basically, everything is the way we interpret it, right? So we interpret the world, we feel how we interpret the world. So we are stressed out if we interpret the world as stressful. But you can't really control that mindset when you're a kid. You just get programmed and by your environment, and you already have like neural pathways in your brain. I mean, at least that's what I heard. I heard that, what was it? You get 50% from the neural pathways from your parents. Or is that, I don't know, is that true or no?
Well, I mean, neural pathways I mean, I wouldn't say that way. Neuropathways are created within your brain, but of course there is habits, which, any neuropathway becomes a habit, and any repeated neuropathway, it becomes a habit, that is created through your set of beliefs. And you get your beliefs when you are a kid from 4 pillars: your parents, school, religion, and community.
Okay, that's interesting, because I was talking to this soldier, and he said he had severe PTSD because he already had a very difficult childhood. So that's why he was not resilient against the stress of the battlefield. So that's why he really had a very long journey to take after he came back from deployment. Okay. Yes.
So I will say something that is very common within soldiers, and is many of them come from families with problematic background. And they get into the military because the discipline that they never had, it comes from the military background. And that's very settling. It makes you feel very secure, because in the military, something good that they have is everything is a schedule. So they always know what's next. When you come from a broken family with a traumatic family upbringing, you never know what's next. Sometimes you don't know how your parents are gonna react or behave. You don't know where you are gonna get your next meal. You don't know if your parents are coming back home. I mean, like, all these insecurities cause a lot of trauma.
It is a movie with Denzel Washington. I forgot the name now, but it is a movie about where he's guiding a young kid, and that kid is very problematic. But then he goes to the Navy, and then he becomes this hero. But honestly, I forgot the part of that movie. But that's how I got introduced to this concept, because I grew up thinking the military is bad in general because it has weapons and it's about killing people. But actually, I got introduced to this concept through this movie that, for some people, the structure, the discipline, also self-respect in many ways is very helpful. And my opinion of the military has changed. Although I don't like more and more weapons everywhere, but sometimes, because they just create more suffering.
Well, I mean, think that you are European, I'm European, right? And that's a very different culture.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we are not raised with guns around the house, right? Even though my dad was a hunter and he used to have hunting rifles, but we never, never care about any of that. It wasn't a thing for us. Here, the gun culture in California is very different. Some places in the United States.
Yeah, I'm German, so my father raised me that war is bad. He lost his father. And then in Germany, we have this huge guilt that we started 2 world wars and the Holocaust. And so anything that has to do with military is bad. So, but that's why it's very interesting, though, because I know for the movie, I work with veterans, and I can see the positive side of the military, because sometimes their attitude is very strong, I would say, very disciplined. They're self-aware. They take responsibility. It's very fascinating. But then on the other side, what I hear is, for example, the Navy SEALs, they create this culture around their warcraft that they really become so skilled and so and so wound up all the time. It's always about better, stronger, who's the most fearsome warrior, that they come back in society. They're traumatized just from this crazy state they are in all the time, because it's all about war. So on one side, you have this very strong sense of duty, self-respect, discipline, But then on the other side, you have the stress of being trained as a killing machine. I talked to this Navy SEAL, and he loves the military, and he's very proud of what he did. And but he said, being trained as a killing machine, basically, being always like hyped up and always trying to be the strongest, the biggest badass, the most dangerous person on the planet. He was traumatized by that. He had to just do
pushing yourself so hard.
Yeah, he actually had to do some like plant medicine special things to finally find himself. And now he's doing great. He's a lovely guy, but he had to just make that transition.
So what happens is when you think about the military as a whole, is one thing. When you think about the individuals, because I train them and I talk to them all the time, you fall in love with them because they are super good people. You know, like they have the values where they should be. They are, you know, like usually family driven. They are just really well-rounded, and they are super smart, especially when we talk about these, you know, like Navy SEALs, Green Berets, Air Force. I mean, I work with these people all the time, and these people are super, super smart. I mean, super well-prepared, intelligent. I mean, like, they speak languages, you know, like it's not a normal human being. You know, like, it's not. They are special. They are different, right?
And you work for the DoD or with the DoD?
Yes, we do. I am a federal contractor, and there is a very interesting story. I think we should talk about that one. The reason why I started working with military here in the United States, because everything has a story behind, right? And I think that's the most interesting part of it. In 2004. I was ready to go to Haiti to adopt my daughter. I had started the process 2 years earlier in 2002, and you get all the paperwork done and everything is going, and they send you pictures, and this is your daughter, and she was 5 years and a half when she got into the orphanage. So they wanted to, you know, like, to get her adopted as soon as possible because less trauma, less, you know, like it's an older kid, right? And they have less chances to be adopted. And in Haiti, there is tons of children for adoption. So as a single mother, was one of the very few countries that I could adopt at that time. And I was ready to, you know, like paperwork was done almost, you know, like everything is getting ready. And Haiti got into a coup d'etat.
Oh, okay.
In 2004, March 2004. So I had a call from my lawyer in Haiti and said, listen, all the offices in the government are on fire. The paperwork that anything and everything that was there is gone. You will have to start the adoption again. And I thought, hell no. I'm not starting this thing again. And then you have to, you know, like, it's not going to be this girl that you already knew, you already are in love with. It's going to be somebody else.
Oh, God.
So I thought, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? So I gathered my family, my parents, and my son, and I said, well, this is what's happening. I'm going to go to Haiti. And my dad said, we'll take care of your son. We'll take care of Paul. And take the time that you need, and, you know, like, we'll take care of him, whatever happens, right? I even had to do my will because I didn't know if I was coming back. They were in war. I mean, that coup d'etat, it was a civil war. And everything was ready. I bought a ticket to fly to Dominican Republic because there was no flights to Haiti. And when I bought the ticket, like, I think it was like 24 hours later, I got a telegram from the foreign affairs lady which at that time was Loyola de Palacio, which right now is dead. She died with cancer. She sent me a telegraph saying that I was not allowed to fly to Haiti or to go to Haiti. They knew I was at the final steps of adopting my daughter, so they were suspecting that I was flying to Dominican Republic to go to Haiti, and that was completely disadvisable because a week before that, a journalist was killed in Haiti, and to recover the corpse and send the corpse back home. The whole thing was super difficult because there was no flights. Everything was super difficult at that time there. So I said, okay. So I had to tell my parents, okay, well, if I die there, just let me rot there. Okay. Don't even think about bringing my body back home. It doesn't matter to me at all. So I had to do a will for this, like we went to the notary and the whole shenanigans. So I flew to Dominican Republic, to Santo Domingo, and I was at the airport and I thought, how am I gonna get to Haiti? Airport was closed, there was no flight, commercial flights. So I thought I'm gonna try to rent a jet, and if somebody can, fly me with it's the same island, it's not that difficult. I thought I'm gonna try this first. If that doesn't work, I'm gonna rent a car and go across the border. That was a little bit more wacky, but I thought, and the last resource is I'm gonna walk because it's not that big.
Oh God,
so I had a plan A, B, and C, right? So no flights, no jets, nobody was flying there, nobody wanted to fly me there. And then I was walking by at the airport. I mean, I didn't leave the airport, right? I was there. And I saw this military guy, and I thought, I'm sure they are going to Haiti. So I walked there and I said, are you with the Air Force? And he was an American Air Force guy. And he says, yes. And I said, are you going to Haiti, to Port-au-Prince? And he says, yes. And I said, can I fly with you? And he says, no, ma'am. This is not a commercial plane. And I said, can I talk to your superior? By then I was bawling. I mean, of course, And and he said, I can. I mean, you can talk to the superior, but it's not going to change the outcome. Mm-hmm. But I did. Anyways, I went there and I talked to the superior. I said, well, this is what's happening. Well, he said, what's the story? And I said, this is the story. And he said, we'll fly you there, but you've never been here.
Wow.
So when I was up in the plane, the first thing that came to my mind is, I don't know how, I don't know when, but if I ever have the chance, I will give back to these guys. Oh. And then, many years later, because that happened in 2004, I moved to United States in 2013. And 2 years later, I start creating a program specialized in brain and behavior, and I donated and I coach voluntarily for the Honor Foundation, which is a nonprofit that helps special forces to transition from active duty to civilian life. Mm-hmm. I work with the Veteran Outreach Program, which I donated my time to and training. I coach therapists from the VA.
Oh, you coach them in what? The whole thing we talked about before, the brain nutrition?
Yes.
Okay.
So I've been volunteering my time with people that is involved with the military world because I promised that day that I would do it.
That's a beautiful story. I love it.
Without them, I would not have my daughter.
I heard that a lot of people don't even know they have trauma. Mm-hmm. And then...
I didn't know I had trauma.
And then also a lot of people maybe know they have trauma. They have the signs of PTSD, like depression, anxiety, but they don't know what to do. They're kind of caught in this medication game. So I talked to someone who prior to going on his journey of healing, he was on 38 medications. So we have these two types. So the first person doesn't even know they have trauma. Let's talk about that for a moment. And then the next step is, okay, you know you have trauma, what are you going to do then? Okay, let's start with the first one.
You don't know that you have trauma because, except when there is a specific incident, right? Like if somebody has a car accident or your children die or you're being raped, that's a very specific thing like that. And you know that that's traumatic and somebody will tell you, right? But in a case like mine, you start getting into trauma smoothly. It's very subtle, right? Especially when you come from abusive relationship. You don't recognize the symptoms because it's very subtle.
So what does happen normally? So you have like the symptoms. Let's say you have depression, anxiety, and then you go to a doctor. They give you medication for depression. If you go to a
doctor, I never did.
Okay, if you go to a doctor, let's say, right? They give you, but that doesn't solve anything, right?
Well, so what happens with antidepressants, and this is a very interesting subject. What happens with antidepressants, what they do basically is disable serotonin. They are serotonin blockers.
Isn't serotonin good?
Yes, serotonin is what makes you happy. But what the medication is meant to do is to disable the serotonin and adds a chemical that fakes serotonin. So it's always in the same amount because everybody releases serotonin in different levels. So if you are somebody that has depression, there is barely any serotonin or very low, right? So the medication, what it does is blocks the release, so your brain, doesn't have up and downs, right? But it's never going to be up. So it's
sounds terrible.
There is no lows or highs, but there will never be highs, and that's really terrible.
It is terrible. It sounds terrible. I took antidepressants once. The doctor gave it to me for sleeping. I literally took half a pill. And the next morning, I wanted to kill myself. I knew it was a medication. I didn't do it, but that feeling was terrifying. And that's why, I know that it helps some people, and I know it's necessary for some people. So I don't want to say it's all bad. So I would never say that, because it saved people's life, and I know that. But in general, when the main goal is to be healthy and then eventually come out of it. So that, what do you need to do?
Well, the first thing is you have to look for the root cause of the depression, because there is always a cause. It can be from the outside or it can be from inside. Like it can be environmental, like trauma related, right? Or it can be chemical imbalances. Some people has chemical imbalances. Either way, you can create homeostasis in your body by doing the right thing. You have to change lifestyle, right? And when I say change lifestyle, it doesn't mean like I'm going to go and live in Beverly Hills right now because, that's doctor's prescription. That's not what it is. Changing your lifestyle means you have to create the right hormonal release in your brain so your brain knows how to heal you.
Okay. So you need to, say that again. You need to
create the right environment inside your brain.
Okay.
The right hormonal release in your brain, the hormonal cocktail, right? So your brain knows what to do to put you back together.
Okay, and how do you do that?
Exercise is extremely important, right? The higher heart rate you go with your exercise, the easier and faster will go because it creates more endorphins. Endorphins is part of the serotonin. Drink lots of water. eat the right things. And when I say eat the right things, I mean good fats from coconut oil, avocado, olive oil, good protein, lean protein, good fish, meats, always smaller than yourself, right? Let's not shoot for cow or pig. They are too big. Hormones can create also interferences in your hormonal release.
Smaller animals are better than big animals?
Yes. It's not like they are better. It's just your hormones are going to overpower their hormones.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Never heard that before.
Yeah. So the body holds chemicals. The muscle holds cholesterol. So if the animal is being stressed because it's being in captivity, and then you are eating that flesh, those hormones, the stress hormones, are going to be in the muscle tissue.
Well, very interesting. So I never heard it down to that detail. Though the stress hormones, the cortisol, they are in the muscle, and even if you prepare the meat, like in a frying pan, they're still there.
So it's a chemical. Like hormones are a chemical.
Okay.
Cortisol specifically is a very strong chemical.
Okay.
Like insulin is a very strong chemical, which also they have in the flesh, right, in the muscle tissue. Chemicals don't die. It's not something that dies. It rots away when they die, and like it disappears, it vanishes. But while there is flesh, right, it's a chemical and it goes dormant.
Okay.
When you are eating it, it recognizes the system.
When I'm looking at meat consumption and fish consumption, they have to be happy. They should be smaller, not massive. Okay.
So like lamb and goat, that's going to be, we don't have a culture that we eat a lot of lamb and goat, but like those animals are still smaller, right?
And then happy chicken from like outdoor farms where they eat and hang out at the grass. And so it's because to me it always sounded like a myth, like eat a stressed animal and you get sick. It's like, oh, come on, no. But I guess, that is the thing, because the cortisol in the flesh.
So if you are somebody that you are already cortisol-ridden because of the daily stress, and then you are adding, like you are eating beef every single day, twice a day probably, there's a lot of people that does that kind of thing.
Yeah, I used to be that person.
Exactly, right? So that's going to cause an effect in your body, right? Like things that are smaller than you are, right? Like any kind of poultry, right? Like quail. Here people doesn't eat quail, but in Europe we do eat quail, right? And pheasants and all of these things, right? Like these things are healthier because they eat more variety, right? They are not caged.
Okay, let's circle back to where we started this. So what do you need to do to put yourself in a better, situation instead of like just taking medication, continue your lifestyle? So, but people are going to say when they see this, it's like, yeah, fine, I mean, I'm suffering so much, I can't even imagine getting out of bed, exercising. I can't even imagine eating healthy because the only, pleasure I have in my life is eating ice cream and watching television or whatever. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that don't even have the motivation to do any of this. Absolutely. There has to be like a much stronger, let's say, tool. Are there any stronger tools for people who are like deeper into the...
So, for example, one of the things that I use all the time when people has depression, right? So the first thing is, if the person is in medication, you never get rid of medication like all of a sudden, right? Like you need the doctor winds them down, they agree. Because, I mean, like at the end of the day, it's your body. And if you want to go off medication, you have the right to do so, right? But you have to put your efforts on getting where you want to be, right? So, of course, lifestyle matters, but then you have to build up towards where you want to be. Because let me
interrupt you here real quick. So, I mean, I have also a lot to do with the recovery community, and there is no way that a person can make this conscious decision every day. I want to get better a little bit every day. I want to make all these routines. They're into their addiction, and it doesn't even have to be drugs and alcohol. I mean, it can be food. It can be,
self-destructive behavior.
It can be Instagram. It can be whatever it is. It can be addiction to violence or anger, and they can just make the decision. Let's just every day I want to get a little bit better. They just say, "Fuck that." I'm sorry, but they just say, "No, I can't do that." Right?
I would say you can do it if you want to do it. Right? Like, first of all, you have to want to do it. Second of all, you have to find resources outside yourself that are going to support what you want to do.
Yeah, for example, a 12-step program. And if you're an addict, I mean, that's probably proven one of the best ways to get sober, is to do a 12-step program.
I mean, like, there is also other things that you can do, but that's a good place. An addict usually switches addiction, right? Like, we are taking the one that is gonna eventually kill us for something that is not gonna kill you, but is gonna be obsessive, right? Either religion or something else, or exercise. Some people get into exercise and they go crazy with the exercising. I mean, it's much better to do these kind of things than keep drinking or taking drugs, right? But there is no addiction that is healed from one day to the next.
Yeah.
There is no depression that is healed from one day to the next. Right? You have to build up towards you want to be. When you have to build up, you have to start one step at a time.
So the willingness is the key. First, you want to change, and then you have to reach out to something outside of yourself, something bigger than yourself, and there are probably different ways of doing that. So I mean,
many ways.
In 12-step, you have the higher power. There's a spiritual journey, not for everyone. But then there are other things when you have to, like, for example, what would be an alternative if you don't want to go to 12-step recovery?
I mean, like the program that I created certifies coaches,
right,
specialized in brain and behavior. So for me, the most important thing is controlling your thoughts is a higher level than controlling your body, right? Like, you have to learn what to put in your body to help your brain to be stronger.
Okay, so that's the first step. So first, you just make the decision to give your brain the right nutrition, so your brain actually has the power to make smart decisions. So there's a direct relationship between, maybe you said it before, but there's a direct relationship between what you put in your body and how your brain functions. And
completely, 100%.
And so basically you can cure a lot of mental disease with the right nutrition.
Yes. So what happens is, when we say mental disease, sometimes there is a disconnection with this, because mental disease or mental or mind, right, is up here. The mind is something that we cannot touch. It's our thoughts, right, and our emotions. Our brain is the physical manifestation of this mind.
Okay.
So it's connected. So if your brain is out of balance, we'll give you an example. We have a chunk of our brain, it's called the deep limbic system. It's one of the largest pieces of our brain. When the deep limbic system is overreactive, we are prone to depression, suicidal thoughts, we are prone to anxiety, to anger.
You said when it's overactive?
Yes, it's overactive. It means that there is something that doesn't like it. Overactive means that you are not feeding the right things, or you are thinking negative thoughts, or involved with negative actions consistently. If you live in a family that suffers from depressions, if you are raised in a family that your parents either or both have depression, you are gonna learn depression. And most likely children will have depression, even if they don't have reason for it.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Because it's a learned pattern.
Yeah.
It's not a physical disease, it's a mind disease. and you learn the way we think.
So it's all interconnected, basically.
Everything.
So everything is interconnected. You know, where you come from, what you eat, the environment you're in, the thoughts you think, and yeah. So for me, it's important that when we talk about something here, that people really get something out of it. So seeing all this, it's sometimes overwhelming. You know, everything's connected. Where do I start? You know. What should I do right now?
That's what I'm saying. You have to seek help outside yourself. Like, we cannot do everything on our own. We are born and raised in communities because that's what we are meant to be.
Seeking help outside yourself is not just going to the doctor and get a prescription. No, it's more like connecting with other people. So even if it's getting a coach from your institute, for example,
Yes.
or just join some kind of meditation community or
church, or hiking groups, or dancing groups, whatever you want to do, but you need community. You have to be surrounded by people because the energy changes your energy.
Yes. And what do you say, for example, I had this conversation with someone whose son is basically online all the time. He even uses the Oculus, and it's just completely digital with all his connections. And he says, his son is happy because he's connected to all these people. I personally have doubts a little bit because I do believe in personal interaction with people as something very healing. I mean, I notice if I go to like a group meditation and then I meet my friend there and we give each other a hug, I feel like I'm like 20% better immediately.
Yes. I mean, especially, not without discrediting what you just said, but especially for women, girlfriends are vital. Like, I need my girlfriends. You can, you can change partners throughout life. You can, like your children grow up and then they go away, but you need your girlfriends.
Yeah, but I think the same thing probably goes for men too. You need your buddies that are always there.
Yes, but
you
men
can
are
pick up the phone.
different. They experience friendship very differently.
Oh yeah, how?
I listened to Jen Fonda talk about this multiple times, and I thought she nailed it. I mean, like, that's how it is. If you are two guys, you are sitting one side by side, right?
Yeah.
And you are looking outside. You are looking football, TV, women, and you talk basically like this. If you are with your girlfriends, you are facing each other, like really close.
I think I'm a girl then. I like face to face.
But that's how it works, right? Like we, and you are very, you are probably not the average guy, right? That's why you do what you do. But that's how it is. Like, is for men, usually they don't get that close because, that can create doubts and unclear sexuality, right? So many times there is all kinds of people, right? So for women, we don't care about that. We don't care. I grab my friends' hands all the time. Yeah. Like we hug on the street, we kiss each other. It's
also a cultural thing. I mean, there's a lot of cultures in the world where men are very physical with each other. And it's like the so-called macho cultures often that are like that the men give each other the warmth.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I'm from Germany. It's kind of a Nordic culture. There's like a lot of distance between.
Like in India, it's very common to see guys holding hands, and they are not, like gays or partners or anything. They just hold hands. They that's a costume. They do it culturally, right? So it all depends where you are at. But this is something that if you observe, if you go outside and you observe, you will see that easily.
Actually, now you realize you have, trauma. And then, so that's what you do. You seek help, and it can come in many, many ways.
Yes. So, there is one thing that we all lack at one point or another in our life, and is faith in ourselves.
Facing ourselves?
No, faith in ourselves.
Oh, faith in ourselves. Okay.
Right? Like we lack believing that you can do this.
Okay.
Like you can, right? And you have to trust that the universe is going to bring the people to you and the resources that you are going to need. You just have to keep your eyes open.
Okay, now here, this is very spiritual, right?
Yeah.
That's the cat. So that's also, I think for a lot of people that are depressed, this is like a huge step. So you probably can't get there right away.
No, but when you are, if you today, right now, if somebody has like clinical depression, right? The one thing that you want to think is, you can do this. You can overcome this depression. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of get upset with the upset. It kind of pisses me off, all this labeling, right? Like, you are depressed, and that goes to your chart, and next year your insurance is gonna go up because you have a diagnosis.
Okay.
Right? And there is this tendency of labeling people, of labeling children is problematic, has ADHD. Then you are creating a problem that is going to stay there with that person for the most part, her or his entire life.
How does it work? Why does it stay? When you label it, and how does it stay?
It's a mental thing. You know you have depression, and now you are depressed.
So you are depressed, and that's part of your identity.
Yes, it becomes part of you, and that's not real.
Right. So
that's just a perception of reality.
Right. And then depression is just basically your body telling you, or your brain telling you, change.
There is something that is not working.
Something needs to be changed.
Yes.
Every time you're sick, you're depressed, something needs to be changed. So looking for change, looking for help from outside is the main thing that needs to be done.
There is nobody that I had working with me or studying with me that had a symptomatology, like mental, physical, that doing the things that they have to do, which are super simple: eating the right things, exercising, sleeping patterns, drinking water, relationship-wise, that didn't improve at least 50% their lives.
Okay, so let's say what are the five most important things that one can do to get better?
Well, as I said, like exercise is one, right? To me, nutrition is the most important thing because it's what you put inside your body, right? But very important as well is know why you are doing things, right? Like, why do I need to eat protein? Why do I need to eat fat? Right? Like, as I said, like, your brain is made out of fat. So it needs fat, right? Protein, because your neuropathways are stronger with protein. You have more resilience to stress if you eat protein, right? You need amino acids. Why? Because your cells, your brain cells and your body cells don't oxidate. They don't rust so fast, they don't die so fast. Your whole body is stronger and youthful longer.
So what's the best brain food you can eat?
There is many, but there is tons of superfoods that are really good. From cacao.
Cacao?
Yeah, raw cacao powder.
Sugar-free, not the Nesquik or anything.
No.
Okay, so we got cacao. What else?
Coconut oil.
Coconut oil.
Maca.
Maca powder.
Maca powder. Chlorella. Turmeric. Mushrooms.
Mushrooms? What
Yes.
kind, though?
Not the happy ones. But there is super mushrooms like reishi, maitake, shiitake, lion's mane, which is only for the brain, basically,
Okay.
right? Cordyceps, that helps to strengthen your immune system. When your gut is healthy, your brain is healthy.
Okay.
Right? So eating junk food creates the opposite effect in your brain.
Yeah.
It makes you more depressed.
Yeah, the microbiome also plays a big part, right?
Yes. Right? So your gut has to be healthy. So when you do all these things, don't think about getting rid of. Because when people comes to me first, is like, the first thing that I don't see people one-on-one now, anymore. But when I was seeing people one-on-one, the first thing that I would recommend the first day is just drink 8 glasses of water a day. It's not about I'm getting rid of the cigarette or the glass of wine. I'm just going to hydrate more. So if I drink a glass of wine, I won't feel so bad the next day, right? Or a whole bottle, right? So you have to build up one step at a time, and it's small changes. Those small changes.
But you can't do it by yourself. It's good to reach out and for help.
Well, you can if you know what to do, but if you don't know what to do, you need somebody.
Yeah, but it's hard. I mean, that's my own experience. I've been trying a lot of healthy things for myself. It was always better when there was a community where there are people doing the same thing, and then we encourage each other, and then it's just much faster and it's more fun, and you connect with other people.
Well, and also you get to see other people's progress.
Yes.
And then you can adapt for yourself, right? Like many times it's like, I can recommend something and that doesn't work for this person, right? Like, and then we say, well, we have to switch. What do you think that will work for you? Because nobody knows your body better than yourself.
Yeah.
There's no doctor in the world that would say, oh yeah, I know better than you about this body.
Yeah. We're back to the aspect of intuition, and your own healing the best.
Yeah.
Do you have a really good story from someone you want to just, one of your clients?
I remember one. I will tell one that is kind of recent because it's really cute. Is a student that she was about to take she was waiting 2 different courses. She was about to take my course, which she was excited about. But then there was this course that was going to teach her how to be a baker. And she always wanted to be a baker, right? The day that decided, I'm going to try this one because it seems like, like in the long run, it can be better for me, brain and behavior coach certification program, she got diagnosed with diabetes.
Oh, yeah.
She said, if I would have chose the other one, eventually in 6 months, I'm dead.
Oh my God. All that.
Because she was already, like she had type 2 diabetes, but she was also really overweight.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah,
so imagine, of course, bakery is super appealing because it's what you like.
Yeah.
Right? The other one is, I'm going to, that's going to put me to work. But she started taking the course, and in 3 months, she didn't even finish the course yet. She lost 16 pounds. She got rid of diabetes, cholesterol, and high blood pressure.
Wow.
By herself. I mean, of course, I was there because we do mentoring calls and all of that. But you can do it. It's just, you have to apply the little changes.
What kind of courses are you teaching? Do you teach different courses or just one? Or
It's one, which is the Brain and Behavior Coach certification program. This program has an accreditation, and this program is the program that we coach the DOD, or federal agencies, right? Then also we have a master class, which is basically the podcast, right? Like it's 10 different subjects. And I teach about those specific subjects in an extended way of the podcast. But yeah, those little things, but it's not a course. That's just basically a master class.
how can people sign up for the course if they want to learn?
Well, they can go to the website, right? And you can buy the course on the website. But we also work with injured workers. So if you are an injured worker and you go through workers' compensation, basically we work with people with brain injury. But anybody can use the course because it teaches about overall health.
So basically just go to your website and then they can find out more.
Yes.
And also you wrote a book.
I did write a book.
What is it called?
The book is called The Fabulous Brain.
Okay, what is it about?
Is about this. It talks about my story. It talks about, there's 12 chapters, and those 12 chapters are about 12 different cases that I worked for several years with different specifics, right? Like from depression, severe depression, from panic attacks, from seizures.
Okay, there's one word that's really following me, and also in my own trauma recovery, it really explains this to me in an almost unconscious way how my life changed through trauma, and it's the word trauma informed. I mean, I think it means even different things to different people. For me personally, what it means is I approach certain situations in my life a certain way because I have a certain trauma. I approach men differently than if I wouldn't have that trauma. I approach women a different way than if I wouldn't have that trauma, for example. So that word trauma informed is very important to me because it's almost like having a blind spot and you don't know it. So how do you get out of this blind spot? Because when you think, for example, it's normal that you don't want to talk to men because you're afraid of them, right? Then you don't even know it, although it's your blind spot. Or there could be all kinds of different examples of that. But how do you discover this blind spot?
Well, it is a little bit tricky, right? Because there is 3 types of information that there is, right? We know what we know. We know what we don't know. And then there is, we don't know that we don't know. And that's the blind spot, right? Like you don't know why you behave in a specific way under a specific circumstances, right? Knowing your blind spot, well, one sign for you to know that you have a blind spot, like the awareness of it, is when you fall into the same issue over and over again, right? You don't know why is this happening to me? Why is people treating me this way?
Yeah, I mean, for example, in relationships, why do I end up always with this kind of woman, for example? Or why do I always, end up with an empty bank account? Why do I always lose my job? Stuff like that, yeah?
Because it's a mindset. It's a mindset. We know what we know. And what we know feels comfortable. So when you recognize that comfort within you, when you are in front of another person, that's the type of people that you will feel attracted because it makes you feel comfortable.
To be around a person that's...
Because you know.
Yeah.
That's a specific type of behavior that you know.
Okay.
And that brings comfort.
So for example, if you're used to being in a negative environment, it makes you comfortable to be in a negative environment.
You are comfortable with that. So you recognize that it can be negative. You can recognize that. But even though people stays because it's what they know.
Right. And how do you get out of it?
Eleanor Roosevelt said a very interesting quote, and she said, do something every single day that makes you feel uncomfortable. Because within this comfort is where growth happens.
So basically, but you have to just to start, you have to be a little aware. So you have to, there's something has to happen that you break out of this unawareness. And I mean, that could be disease, it could be some kind of catastrophe, it could be any kind of thing that where you run into a wall, basically, right?
Well, the job that I was doing in the past brought me to get super sick. But I got super sick because I was already following that self-destructive pattern with my ex-husband. So that started before I got the job and I got my education. And it felt comfortable. Like he mistreated me and I kept going with the role. Right?
Yeah.
The day that it felt very uncomfortable was the day that I got sick. Like the day that my body wasn't functioning, I thought that's scary.
So that was your wake-up call. I mean, that's how it happens. People have a wake-up call at one point, and then it's really important to look around, try to research. I mean, hopefully this video, for example, people will find it on their research, and then that's the first step, to have the first glimpse of insight, follow some suggestions, and then move. Start growing, start working, and then the willingness comes from the pain. That's my experience.
Exactly. Yeah. Like the higher the job, the higher the purpose, the higher the fall.
Okay, explain that to me.
The higher is your purpose in life, for good, to serve others, the higher is the fall that you have to have before.
So the deeper the rock bottom, the more you can actually help.
The stronger is the way up.
All right. Well, that's a great way to end this. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks to you.
I want people to buy the book. And so there was a lot of wisdom, and I'm very happy that you were here.
Thank you.
Thank you
My pleasure.
very much. All right.
Thank
Bye.
you.